Oh, look what we have.
Oh, how did you find
Look
that?
what we have.
Okay, that is just really, really mean.
Young Jennifer Young.
Funny thing about that dress is that I thought it was amazing. And my youngest sister, Sarah, she said it was the ugliest thing she's ever seen, and she got grounded. You know what the really bad thing is? If someone sent you a college picture, my hair just got bigger and bigger and poofier.
Hands up, heads down, shake it on, turn around. We're kicking down, we're gaining ground. We do it right, do the here right now.
All right. Jennifer Homer,
Scott Smith,
welcome to Super Trooper.
thank you for having me.
We had a lovely dinner last night with Miss Hot Dog.
Yes, we
and
did.
John Homer.
Yep.
Got to go to the pub.
He loved the pub.
That probably is the person who's loved the pub more than anyone where we've taken him there. Like, he really loved it.
Oh my God, that's hysterical. You're going to have to get him a t-shirt.
Oh, I will get him a
Yeah.
Pub 412 t-shirt.
Yeah. You know what? He's probably so excited because we have one really close to our new house, and we live in a kind of has a Main Street community. And the last place I want to go, it's called Chappie's. They just moved. So he loves when the kids come to town because they'll go with him. Right. Because otherwise, I'm like, if you go by yourself, you're kind of like the creepy old guy hanging out at Chappie's.
Right. All right, Jen. First of all, we're going to have to get to the whole Jenny thing. But
Okay.
Principal at Strategic Benefits of Cincinnati.
Yes, I am.
Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because before that, it was Strategic Employee Benefits Services
Oh
of
my
Cincinnati.
gosh, I know. Thank God we got to shorten it. If we went way back, it was even longer and longer when we were all part of Northwestern Mutual. So.
Right. When's
yeah.
so you're the principal of that agency. We have a partner named Dave Shorty Short.
Yep.
And when is the first? What year did we meet?
Do you know what is so funny? I was thinking about that this morning because I at least can go back to True starting in 2016, I think it
Yes.
was. But when we were part of Northwestern Mutual, I remember the year we went to Weston Kierland, I
Okay.
think like 2 years in a row.
Yep.
So I don't know what year that was. You probably know better than I. So at least starting then.
I'm guessing that was 2000 and does 2006 sound right?
It might.
When did you start at Northwestern Mutual or since?
Well, that's a whole evolution because I've really been part of Northwestern for like 30 years because my
Right.
dad was a Northwestern Mutual guy.
Right.
So I don't really recall when I finally got to travel as a SEBS person because I wasn't really on their payroll. I just was a financial rep at a big book
Right.
of business. But I do remember because I remember Val and I having coffee at a Northwestern Mutual annual meeting in Milwaukee sometime around then. So
I'm
at
going to
least
guess
then.
6, 7, or 8.
Yeah.
So let's go 2007.
Okay.
Was that 16 years?
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Do
I
high
always do
math.
math. I'm in Alabama. We
Yeah.
struggle.
Okay, and I can't do math. So,
16
I'm just
years.
going to nod.
That's a long time.
That's a long time.
And you've been here. This always happens.
Yeah.
You've been here not quite 24 hours.
Yes.
And you've fallen in love with Lake Guntersville.
Oh my gosh, have I fallen in love with it? I also think more so because my daughter's in Birmingham.
That's
so
right.
she relocated when she got out of college and took a job with Abbott there. So then I'm like, it's even more convenient because I would think coming from Cincinnati, you wouldn't choose a lake to go to really with a 7-hour drive. You would try to find something.
Well,
You know,
yes.
a lot of people go in Tennessee 4 hours. But with her there, now I have a motive. She keeps saying she's going to move home, when
Right.
she starts having kids. But now I'm like, I don't know, maybe if I ever get to retire in my lifetime, I'll come here and you can stay where you are. So,
Well, we have a long, it's the long play.
Yeah.
Where we're just going to build a life here where all the people we love
Yeah.
either have homes or they retire here or second homes. And then we're never going to leave.
you're
ever.
never going to have to leave. And then what you can do on your property is just make these little houses that people can rent
So
and stay at.
I will show you today when we take our tour. There is actually a place to do this.
Yeah.
Close to our house.
Yeah,
All right,
that's gonna
Jen.
be fun.
So let's go back. We just want to get to know you.
Okay.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Like Cincinnati proper or like a suburb?
Suburb
Yeah.
for the most part. Downtown's, relatively big. Don't ask me how many, the population, because I don't know. But Cincinnati's just a town where a lot of people don't leave. If they do leave, they usually come back. And I always say my dad was pretty clever on really pushing the agenda of going to UC, University of Cincinnati,
Right.
where I went. in hopes that I would meet someone, get married, and not leave.
Oh.
Right. And there's 4 girls in my family, and all of us are there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Growing up with 3 sisters.
Yes.
So, little Jen Homer.
Yeah.
First of all, take me through the evolution of your name.
Okay.
So last night, when we met a bunch of people at
Yeah.
dinner and went out last night, you always introduce yourself as Jennifer.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that is unique. Like,
Yeah.
I just have known you as Jen forever.
Yeah.
When you were little, elementary and middle school, who were you?
I think Jennifer.
You were Jennifer.
Yes. For sure when I was getting yelled at or in trouble.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you ever Jenny?
No. Well, actually, I take that back. I did go through this phase in like 4th grade, kind of rebellious. This is as rebellious as I got. So
If you
pretty big
rebelled
rule
in
follower.
4th grade, I think it's pretty mild.
Yeah, exactly. And so I went through the Jenny phase, changed my name. I was writing it on my school papers. That didn't last very long.
With an I or Y?
With a Y.
Okay. All right.
It's funny though. I now today, if I'm in a room and hear Jenny, I won't turn my head.
Yeah.
Like it's just like a foreign name to me. I would say 99% of the people I know call me Jen.
When did that start? When did Jen start happening?
I think my whole life, because you just start shortening it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when I was little, my mom did not want me to be called Jen. She liked, the long full name.
All
moms.
All moms. Like,
Yeah.
well, our daughter is Madeline.
Yeah.
And I have never called my daughter Maddie.
Yeah.
Ever.
Right.
But her boyfriend, all of her friends call her Maddie. And I think we made it like till 10th or 11th grade
Yeah.
with Madeline. And now I'm like, who is this Maddie person?
Right.
You are Madeline.
Yeah.
Same thing probably with moms and Jennifer.
You probably have a nickname for her, though. Being
Madeline?
You're a nickname guy.
Not really. Madeline does not have a nickname. Carson, he became C because there were 3 Carsons on a soccer team at one time.
That's crazy.
And we couldn't, so I just started calling him C, and that stuck all the way through high school. But no, not really.
You're going to have to work on that.
I know. Well, they're my lovely children now.
I know.
Madeline and Carson. We're going to get to your kids because I know how much you love them.
Yeah.
So what was like little Jennifer, what was your maiden name?
It was Young.
Jennifer Young.
Jennifer Young. My
J-Y.
dad- J-Y. And I didn't like my last name because I'm like, Young. That's like so boring. But
You're talking to Scott Smith.
I know.
Jennifer Young is pretty cool.
It is
compared
cool,
to me.
yeah.
So like middle school, some of the toughest years for girls are middle school.
Yeah.
What were you like in like middle school?
So I went to a Catholic grade school, as does everyone in Cincinnati.
Okay. Uniforms and everything?
Uniforms and everything. I look back on pictures. It's so funny. My mom actually subbed there sometimes. You knew. I used to hate when the sub was like friends of my parents because I'm like, oh no. I would say overall, though, if you interviewed my sisters, I was probably the most that was a rule follower. I had a lot of that like Catholic guilt, whatever it was in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 8th grade, high school. I played sports, but I do remember like 7th and 8th grade where the girls were just mean, and I probably was mean too. I'm not gonna. I feel so bad now. Like if I run into someone who maybe look back and I'm like, God, I don't know if I was nice to her because now I feel horrible.
Well, that's the Catholic guilt coming.
It's the Catholic guilt just
hanging
comes
around.
through. I'm like, I want to write him a note. Like, I'm really sorry if I was mean in 7th grade.
I love imagining you like writing a note like,
Yeah.
Dear Catherine,
Yeah.
you may not remember me, but in 7th grade,
Yeah.
that's funny. We were talking last night, and John and I both had a little stint playing college basketball.
Yeah.
Your lovely husband, John, and he was like, actually, Jim was a really good athlete.
I know.
And I was like, oh, really? Because you don't. Not that I mean, you're a runner, and you've always been a runner. The whole time
Walker. Don't really run.
You don't run
I'll
anymore?
walk.
You used to run.
Yeah. A long time ago.
Yeah. But I was like, oh, I didn't see you as like a really good high school athlete. Could have gone to college and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, tell me about your athletic
It's so
prowess.
funny because no one thinks I was an athlete. I want to use the word, I had a more probably athletic build. In high school, played basketball was my main sport, softball. John always says that.
Uh-oh, look what we have.
Oh, how did you find
Look
that?
what we have.
Okay, that is just really, really mean.
Young Jennifer Young. Oh, yeah, young Jennifer Young.
Okay, so funny story about that dress.
We're watching a picture, by the way. We're looking at a picture right now.
Yeah. Funny thing about that dress is that I thought it was amazing. And my youngest sister, Sarah, is 6 years younger. So that was probably freshman year in high school, sophomore. So she's, grade school. She said it was the ugliest thing she's ever seen, and she got grounded. for a weekend.
For criticizing this dress.
And she still brings it up.
This is the dress.
This is the dress.
Well, you know, it's all the same color, I think.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, lovely shade of brown
Oh my.
with a lace collar.
You know what the really bad thing is? If someone sent you a college picture, my hair just got bigger and bigger and poofier as I got older.
That is so funny.
So, oh my gosh.
Oh, look at John. So when is this?
Okay, I'm really mad at the two of you right now. This was not on the email. If I would come do this.
I didn't know what was happening either.
Huh?
I didn't know what was happening either, by the
So
way.
that is his senior prom. So it's my sophomore year. I mean, what is that necklace?
Well, I'm sure you really liked it, though. You looked
Yeah.
in the mirror and you were like, more lace.
I thought I looked really good.
You had more lace.
Yeah.
You're really into the lace these days. So, no, I'm not going to ask you what year it is. I'll let you. So your sophomore year.
I think that was I met him the
His
summer of
senior.
my sophomore year in high school. So that had to be his senior prom.
We were talking last night about what he was joking about. He was the worst organizer of dates because he would just like go to an open gym and you would tag along and then go home after 5 hours of basketball and watch more basketball.
Yeah.
You must have just been smitten.
I must have been smitten. The funny thing is, we met. So he went to a public high school close by, and one of my friends at my all-girls high school went there for a year or two, and then she transferred. So I thought she was really cool. She'd go to all these parties. It was Madeira, was his high school. I didn't know anyone there, but I just tagged along. And I think she might have had a little too much to drink, if I'm remembering. So John, who liked her, had to drive me home.
Well, you know, I always ask this question.
Yeah.
So the question is the first time you locked eyes
Yeah.
with John.
It's because he had to drive me home.
That was
But he didn't
it?
really want to drive me home. I was kind of a pain in the butt that he had to take me home. But I remember all of a sudden he was like, "Oh, can I call you sometime?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh," But I did think he was kind of cute. But I mean, he was really trying to date my friend.
Right.
But she really wanted to date his friend, so it all worked out in the end.
So I'm getting this straight. You were at a party in high school. Had you met him earlier that evening? Or
I
did
had
you-
not. I knew who he was though, because this is funny. I used to go to my dad used to send me to all these open gyms for basketball.
Right.
And one of them was his high school's open gym because it was close to our house. So I knew who he was, and he was kind of, one of the really good basketball players.
Right.
And but
So did you, like, when it was him taking you home, were you like, oh? Or no?
not initially. This is so mean, but he had this really weird outfit on, so I was like,
Of course you would
to this
remember
day
that.
he'll bring that up, right? Well, and I don't know, it just happened, but I did think he was cute all the time, like when I would go to
Right.
open gym. So
All right. So you're in high school. You're meeting him. Where are you in the sister ranks?
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest.
Yes.
So what's the ages?
So I'm the oldest. My sister Stephanie is 2.5 years younger than me.
Okay.
And then Sarah. I actually have a foster sister, Annette. My parents had her come live with us in kindergarten, but she never left. So
Okay.
it's amazing. She changed her name when she was 18, when you can legally do that. So she and Stephanie are actually 1 month apart.
Oh, wow.
So it was, I think for both of them, it was a big sacrifice, right? Because all of a sudden you're sharing your room and your
Yeah.
beds and your toys. And then my youngest sister, Sarah, is 6 years younger.
Did your parents foster more than that?
No,
that was
just
just
Annette.
the one and done.
Yeah,
huh?
one and done. And I think, their intention probably they would have continued. I never really have thought about it except for in our new house, our new next door neighbors were fostering Iris and Max, a 3 and a 1 year old. And I just watched them. In fact, it's kind of a sad story because they had to go back to the family. But since we've lived there, oh my God, what a sacrifice that you are willing to do that. So then it made me kind of regret that I never did it.
Yeah. Well, we're going back. John Monahan was he the last Super Trooper, Britt? I can't remember if there's been someone in between. No, Jake Clear was.
Okay.
But John was 2 ago. We haven't released that episode yet. I'm actually going to have to go back and do my first ever kind of voiceover. You know how Carl Richards does the thing on, is it Carl Richards?
Yeah.
I was just
He does.
at a space moment there where he'll stop the podcast and he'll say, "Hey, Carl here." And he'll talk about that.
Yeah.
John's parents were foster parents and
Yeah.
their whole life growing up. And I totally just missed that in the interview. So I've
Yeah.
got to go back and add that in.
I do like when he does that because you've got me hooked on that podcast.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting to get his perspective during it. Right?
Yeah.
So,
We laughed last night because it's called 50 Fires.
Yeah.
By the way, for you listeners, Carl Richards is an author. He spoke at a true event
yes,
recently.
he was fantastic.
About money and meaning in your life. And he has a podcast called 50 Fires, We laughed last night because Val's been sharing, like, everybody she knows, you got to watch this podcast. It's called 10,000 Fires.
And then they leave her and they search it and they can't find him. Poor Carl, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm trying to boost my viewership here, right?
I'm going to call Carl and say, you need to set your goals higher. 50 fires is not enough. We need 10,000 fires.
Yeah. I've told a lot of people, it's funny, they'll be like, oh, it's, typical people who, whatever happens now, they have a bunch of money. So, of course, life's easy for them. And I'm like, no, it's not that at all. It's very introspective on life in general and upbringings and psychology of money. Not everyone's been successful with it. So I don't know. I listen to podcasts, but I wouldn't say I'm a regular podcast listener. It's been kind of one of my goals. I've been trying to read more as well. And, with working, there's only so much time in a day. But this is one I just have been playing on every day right now, trying to get through them. So
it's one of the cool things about True is exposed me to a bunch of really cool people, and I get to share those people at our events. Really, it happened during COVID. We started these virtual events and having speakers, and then we had that event at Barnsley Resort in Georgia, and we really didn't have time to come up with like this robust peer-led agenda because it was like, can you have an event? Can you not have an event? And we had this window in 2021 where it was like, so I think we can have an event. We can do it at Barnsley. Yeah. We can make it outside. Okay, we're going to find some speakers.
That gives me chills because I remember that's when we had Jesse Itzler, right? And Steve Nudelberg. Mm-hmm. I literally follow Jesse Itzler on Instagram because I think he and Sarah Blakely are the two funniest humans. Like, I tell people, I'm like, you have to follow them because it's just, they're dynamic and, I feel like they seem extremely grounded, for their success. But that was like a pretty star-studded lineup.
Yeah, we've had a couple of those that have happened. Our first Oasis event was James Clear and Morgan Housel. And
it's unbelievable.
It's been really cool.
Yeah.
But let me jump back into Jen Homer.
Okay. Can you see that I like to deflect off myself?
That's okay. I can handle it.
Yeah.
I'm married to Miss Hot Dog.
Yeah.
The oldest. Yeah. So usually the oldest is stereotypical, like high achiever. Yeah. What was the dynamic like having 4 girls in the house growing up?
Oh my God. Okay. This is how my dad will tell it. I'll tell one story just to give you an idea. So he had 4 girls, my mom, a neutered dog, and 3 women at the office. Okay. So I worked with him for several years and used to tell people, you should just feel sorry for me because every day I get up, I have a wife, 4 girls, a neutered dog, and then I come to work and it's all women. So he loved his girls so much, or he's still alive, so he loves us. But I was the rule follower for sure. Okay. I mean, I had my fair share of, being bad, but I definitely, my sisters get so mad because then I think my parents got a barking dog. So they used to just get in trouble all the time. But the dynamic in our family was really interesting because there was a boarding school literally only 45 minutes from Cincinnati, cheaper than my Catholic girls' high school. So I don't want to say boarding school like boarding school. Yeah. It was really, and I played a basketball game there and Stephanie tagged along, my next sister, and she loved it. So she ended up wanting to go there, and then Annette did. So Monday through Friday, for their high school years, they weren't even home.
Wow.
And now I forget everything. My sister remembers everything. She's like, no, don't you remember Dad made you drive us up there? I'm like, that's awful. So they had me at senior in high school driving an hour, picking them up from sports. And I'm lucky I'm alive probably. And then the baby, Sarah, she lasted a year there. Okay. So it was run by nuns, but no phones or anything back in those days. So my sisters just ran amok up there.
Right.
They'd sneak out and... so that was a different dynamic. And it's funny because we were not at home that often together. It was probably when I got to college and then Stephanie started looking, then we started hanging out more and it just kind of evolved, that way. But
what were your parents like? Like your dad, was your dad at Northwestern Mutual forever?
Yeah. He actually was in life insurance for most of his career. He's so funny. They played basketball, Thomas More. Then he wanted to be a priest.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he still goes to church every day. And then he was kind of flailing, and one of our family friends was like, oh, you can sell life insurance. So he's like, okay. So he had a career. He didn't join Northwestern Mutual till like 1990. But the one thing I can say about him, I don't want to say like he genuinely knows so many people, but he has spent his whole life helping others. Right. I try to incorporate that in my personal life and my career too. It's just like, if you give back, it'll come back. And he always was like that. So we would walk, our office was downtown at the time. And we'd walk down the street, Tom. His name's Tom. Everyone knew him. He did a lot of estate planning when it was the thing, right? And so I had so much fun just kind of working with him. And he really like was successful because of just the human being he is.
Right.
And he's still that way. Sometimes I'm like, you can't save everyone, Dad, you know. But he's 84 right now. And I think it really keeps him going. He's still very involved in different charities and helping people.
Right.
And my mom, she grew up in Minnesota. My dad was in Cincinnati. But the funny thing, they were both teachers in Lauderdale.
Really?
And met down there. And my dad will say my mom was the messiest human you've ever seen. My mom, I would tell you, is the neatest human. So we grew up in a very clean,
right.
chores. I would say that I'd probably eat on my parents' garage floor. That's how clean it is. And so my dad's always like, I don't know what happened. But so my dad was the one that just loved his girls, drove us to school a lot of mornings, take us to get donuts, you know, very involved, went to all our sports events. And my mom did too. But once Stephanie went to Oldenburg and then she played college volleyball, he did the whole tour. And then Sarah played, my youngest sister played a couple years as well.
Oh, so you were all girls were athletic.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So he still goes to church every day?
I think so, yeah.
Wow. That is a unique kind of grounding.
Right.
That creates a really unique human.
Yeah. Yeah. He is. And I go to a non-denominational church now, which I love. And I used to be worried to tell him, but he's like, he doesn't really care as long as you have faith, right? So,
That's special.
Yeah.
So you meet John in, you're 15 or 16?
The first time I went to his house, I rode a moped.
Okay.
I didn't have a driver's license.
Right. And so did you guys date all the way through? Like, was there ever like a breakup or anything?
Yeah, no. Yeah. So then he went away for college, and then I ended up had 2 more years of high school, and we would see each other here and there, but you know how that goes. He'd probably tell it a little bit differently. I might have had 1 or 2 other boyfriends in that time. And then I went to UC. And he was playing basketball at a Division III actuarial school, Rose-Hulman. He's like, okay, I'm not going to be an actuary.
Right.
So he came home to UC, and then we dated through college then. So
it was funny because, you know, at dinner last night, we were talking, he was like, I want to come watch the podcast so I can like press a buzzer in case she tells anything wrong.
Oh, he so wants to press the buzzer. Yeah, he was really bad. He couldn't come. I'm like, you're not. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be great because, you know, I will talk to Britt, our producer, right here all the time. I was just imagining him sitting right behind there.
Yeah.
And me being like, John?
Val thinks we need to add that in these. You know what? If he wants to tell his story, then he can go on a podcast, right?
There you go.
Right? You can do that. I said, you're more than welcome to it. But yeah, so he came back. It's funny though. My sister's stories are hysterical because you realize like I wasn't driving, then I was. And then my parents would travel and go out of town and he'd come over. I think two of my sisters wrecked his car. One wrecked it just pulling it in the garage. And I was probably trying to like hide that he was over from this nosy neighbors. You know, so their stories, he did all their homework, you know, it's pretty funny to hear them.
I'm going to verify. I'm going to talk about all this afternoon when we do our tour of Guntersville. Out of college, so you graduate UC. What's your first job out of school?
My first job is a bank, which you know me pretty well. It's so funny. My dad wanted me to go to UC to co-op. So University of Cincinnati does have like an amazing co-op program. But kind of back to his plan to keep me there.
Yeah.
I see it now, right? John had taken a job with E&Y at the time in accounting because he was 2 years older. So I went to work at Fifth Third and they promised me that it was like a marketing type of job.
Okay.
Yeah. So they had a program where you rotated, you did all the rotations. So I did the branches. Real quick kind of story there. I actually was robbed.
For reals?
For real. So I think
like a teller kind of robbed?
Like literally robbed. So the branch was a new one. They don't do this anymore. We have a back and a front door.
Yeah.
And we had literally just opened. Like the lock went off and they came in, but I was I think I actually was the manager at the time. So we were on one side and the tellers at the time, they're called, were on the other side. So we just all had to get on the floor. Like heart beating on the floor, had guns, but they weren't very smart because usually you like roll out these trucks, they call them, but this branch was old. So you bring them out of the vault, you roll them in, and then you roll them back in at night. 3 drawers of cash, you know, big bills on the bottom. Well, here they just had these, literally looks like a a money box at a sporting event, right? Just a metal box. So if they would have just grabbed the box and ran,
Right.
they'd have a lot of money. But they didn't. And there's these die packs, so you grab them and then they blow. So I think they eventually got caught. They had robbed a whole bunch. The gun, one of them left a gun.
Oh.
That's how dumb he was, number
Yeah.
two. But it wasn't loaded.
Okay.
So that at least made me like, whew. But I will tell you, Fifth Third back in the day, the president was George Schaefer, military. Like it was a very military run
Okay.
company. I could tell stories for days. They reopened us. So these poor people who basically thought they were going to be
Right.
I couldn't even believe it. So say this all cleared out, cops came, and we were reopened by 1 o'clock.
You're like,
I
everybody
just-
dust yourself off. It's good. Everybody's
So,
fine.
yeah, you're okay. But the funny thing is, I already knew I was leaving the branches. I went into National Lending, which is even more comical. And when I left the branches to go to National Lending, the president of the bank thought I left the branches because I was, had post-traumatic stress disorder from
Right.
it. I'm like, no, I already had this other opportunity.
Right.
And National Lending, I cannot read a balance sheet or financial statement. And I've told them that. Right. I'm like, this is back in the suited up
Yep.
banking days. It's like, oh no, it's okay. So I sold cash management, like lockbox, all these banking kind of services, but I traveled a lot, which was fun.
Yep.
I was in my 20s.
Wait, I have to ask about the robbery. Hold on.
Yeah.
So I just need to know how it went down. Like you were standing and you heard someone say, "We're getting robbed," or you saw the actual people
He
come
ran in and they said, get on the floor.
Man, it's like a movie.
It's like a movie. And the thing about it is, if you picture it, normally now everyone's on one side. But if you go down, there was a front and a back door, this lobby, we were all over here on the floor and the tellers were all over here.
Yeah, I get you.
I think so it was, to me, it seems like it was an eternity. I mean, they were probably in there, I don't know, 3 minutes and left. The thing about it is, in this day and age, I think it would have been something worse,
Yeah.
right? I really do.
Well, I did not know this.
Yeah.
So Fifth Third, how long were you at Fifth Third?
So, how many years? I left in 97. Probably about 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not an insignificant amount of time.
No, yeah. Because I left because I knew I wanted to start having kids. And at the day, when I was on the loan floor in National Lending, which is where the CEO and president were, I mean, you were required, the latest you could get there was 7. Mm-hmm. And it was all about show. And then if you were not still on your desk at 6, not
Right.
good. And I'm like, what kind of life is this going to be?
Right.
Yeah. And my dad at the time needed someone to come work for him. Mm-hmm. So I left, in anticipation of having kids.
Right.
So, so it was 5 or 6 years.
And then how old were you when you had your first?
2 days before 30. I was like, I'm having my first kid by 30.
Yeah.
So Andrew's birthday is August 14th and mine's the 16th.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Me too. I was 29 when Madeline was born.
Yeah.
So same thing. And then how long between
And then Caroline's 2 years younger.
2 years? So I waited 3 years. But wow. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, True Network really came out of, a lot of us were part of Northwestern Mutual.
Right.
And we ran the employee benefits divisions of these Northwestern Mutual offices in various structures. And it was a little bit the Wild West.
Yeah.
But starting, if we met in, say, 2006 or 7, and then John Monahan with PDCM in Iowa, Liz Frayer, now Intrepid Atlanta, and Val, Intrepid Colorado, Miss Hot Dog, my wife, they were all in the same training class.
Right.
In the group benefits division to be a group, quote unquote, specialist, which is 20 or 21 or 22 years ago
Right.
now. So we were all in that. And at one time, I can remember a marketing page which had us, quote us, Strategic Employee Benefit Services was the brand, as like the 6th largest consulting firm in the country.
Isn't that crazy?
When you aggregate it,
Yeah.
and the largest small group. That was before One Digital.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of crazy to think about. Like, I think there were like 85 or 95 offices around the country.
Right.
And we would get together at these meetings and
Yeah.
pretty much complain all the time. First time this has ever
First
happened.
time. And by the way, everyone listening, I turned my phone off before
It's the
this
first
started
time.
in fear of that happening.
Watch this. Let's record this.
saying.
Let's record this. Hold on. Let's do it. Hello, darling daughter. Hold on. Didn't. Hold on. Hello, darling daughter. Hey, I'm in the middle of actually doing a podcast, and I forgot to turn my ringer off. How about that? Do you need anything? Is it an emergency, or you just need to chat? Okay, I'll call you back. Love you. Bye. Well, there you go.
Hey, I get it. So Val and I were having this conversation last night of girls versus boys. And my daughter, if she doesn't text or call me many a time per day, I'm like, gosh, what's going on, right?
Right.
So, and then Andrew, if he calls, I'm like, whoa, I better pick that up, right? You don't text, but most boys aren't like big, like, hey, let me call and just chit
Yes.
chat, right?
Yep.
So you know what, you can always pick up the phone for the kids.
Right. Well, that's the first time I haven't turned my ringer off. I think it'll provide good humor on
It'll
the
totally
episode.
provide, yeah. And I totally get it.
Well, and I told Madeline, Madeline has a vision disorder, and I feel compelled to stay in touch.
Yeah.
And this is interesting, I think, in that I probably talk to Madeline every day.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 out of 4 days. We're just close.
I love it.
Carson, on the other hand, he's not. He will call me. He's a sensitive kid. He reminds me of so much like me. It's scary, Jim. Like he will never listen to this, so he won't hear it. But he doesn't like it when I say that. He doesn't hate it, but he's starting to acknowledge that he's a lot like me.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, let me jump back in where we were before I so weirdly interrupted us. We were talking about Northwestern Mutual.
It's interesting. You were saying how big they were, and I to this day say someone at Northwestern Mutual regrets when ACA hit, allowing all the agencies to sell and do everything they did, right? Because if you think about it, it only went up from there. Like they would have just continued to make money off it. And
there are two sides to that.
Yeah.
So the managing partners regret it.
Yep.
Because they were getting filthy rich off of our relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Home office, I think, is glad because it got rid of the compliance and all the overs and the distraction because there were many Northwestern managing partners who were making more off their group operation than off their core operation. Now they're more focused. So I think Northwestern Mutual is happy.
Yeah.
The managing partners are like, man, that gravy train.
That was.
I don't know how we got off there.
Yeah, but I remember you guys. So I had my specialist in our office was Pat Kern, older than you guys.
Oh,
but
so can we just say this?
Yeah.
Quite the character is Pat Kern.
Character.
I mean, he is one of a kind.
He's one of a kind.
Yeah.
I would 100% agree with you. And I used to just tag along to the SEBS events because I probably was very involved in running it, but I wasn't titled that way. I still was just a financial rep, and my dad and I just sat in their area. But I used to get to go to things. I used to be so jealous because I'm like, God, I wish I was at the helm, really.
Right.
Because home office didn't recognize me as a specialist for a while. Like I think we had to go through some kind of rigmarole that I could even attend, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then I would see you guys, and so I'm like, I wish I could just be in that study group or do those things, but things always evolve, and
they do. Well, and same thing. I had a financial representative contract the first 3 or 4 years because I did a bunch of 401k work, and I was referring out a bunch of sort of estate planning work, and so I was a partner in the group operation for 3 or 4 years before it was recognized.
Yeah.
The same as you, really.
Yeah.
I think often in life you don't realize how good things are.
Right.
So we would always complain about our managing partners or this or that or the financial reps. And if I just look back, now I had a really great managing partner.
Yeah.
Probably top 3 best men that I've ever been around.
Wow.
I mean, Lex Williamson was just a wonderful human, fair, honest, kind, like everything you would want in a guy. And so we had a great deal, right? So we had no business risk and a salary and a portion of the profit.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good deal.
It's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. And to just not know it. Sometimes I'll think about that and be like, okay, what am I complaining about now that I shouldn't be complaining about in retrospect?
Yeah. And I will tell you, I'm so grateful though. I mean, to be able to work with my dad all those years, and I loved our agency in Northwestern Mutual. I mean, I went through 3 managing partners. The one that was there that recruited my dad, Ron, is, I'm afraid to say an age in case he ever listens to us, but maybe late 70s. Just a really good human in Cincinnati, gives back, just I see him all the time. His son now has a very, very big practice within that office. And we've been through them, but I'm still, I think about that as like one of the greatest times of my career for
Uh-huh.
sure.
Yeah, me
just
too.
kind of doing it.
Yeah, it allowed me to mature a little bit. I was still kind of in an immature phase of my
Right.
life, and that was a good place for me to grow up a little bit.
100%.
All right, so let me jump back in timeline a little bit. So you're working with your dad now.
Yes.
At North. You start having children.
So it was great because it's so funny. When I was at Fifth Third and I had to be there so early, when I first started working for my dad, I'm like, I'm going to get in really late, like 7:30. I remember coming in the morning, like, why are you here?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
This is the insurance business now, right? I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of nice. So I think I had a solid year under my belt before I had Andrew, and it was amazing because I really knew I didn't want to work full time and have my children. And I think that might have been just my experience growing up because my mom was home and had a really involved dad and just kind of what I wanted to do, but I also wanted to work.
Yeah.
And so I had the best of both worlds because I could work whatever days I wanted. I kind of, forged my own path. And then I remember the time when both kids finally were on the school bus.
Yep.
And that feeling of relief knowing no matter what, I'm good 8:30 to 3:30.
Right.
Because I remember getting a big group prospect would call me and be like, hey, can you talk at 4:30? I'm like, oh, you're figuring it out. So I feel like when I look at my journey, each period of time just got a little bit easier. And the one thing about insurance, and I think we were talking about last night, is no one ever says they're going to go into insurance. But when you look at it, it really affords you a very flexible and enjoyable lifestyle because at the core, you're helping people.
Yeah.
And when I get out of bed in the morning, I have to be helping people. So when people say, what do you do? I'm like, yeah, we do employee benefits, but I look at it differently. Right. As the ability to give back to people.
Well, having a purpose like that, I think, we're all different, but many of us need a purpose to do business.
Yes.
Because I've got, some close friends who really their main goal is to make money.
Right.
And those are the least fulfilled friends that I have. Like when they just kind of deal to deal or business to business, and when it's just about making money, like one of my best friends, has said to me, I'm so jealous of you with True because of the fun you're having and the impact you're having. Because I think when we grow up, if we're growth focused or minded, it's we're supposed to be making money, right? We're supposed to be always making more year to year. Or I think we get tricked.
I think we got tricked. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about your kiddos.
Yep.
Let's go backwards to forwards. Andrew now is where?
So Andrew is 26 and he is in Tampa. So
That's right.
He works for Stryker. So a fun place to visit. He started in Fort Myers, and Caroline, I talked about, she's here in Birmingham, which is amazing. And she's 24.
Yep. So a big part of your life was 5 or 6 years with Andrew's football career.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so he played at Miami of Ohio,
Yep.
right? Tight end.
Yes.
It's so funny because as I've probably watched more Miami of Ohio football games and Michigan State football games because of our friend Dave Sokol and his son that played there, also a tight end.
Right.
It's just really cool to pop on a TV and a Thursday night, it's Miami of Ohio playing Akron or whoever it was, and somebody's like, "Why are you watching this game?" I'm like, "Look at that guy right there."
Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah. So what was that like of having a kid play Division I football and go to the games and talk about that area part of your life?
Yeah, it's funny. John and I were just literally talking about that a couple days ago because now we're beyond it. And I would say, looking back, it was 6 years of tears, immense enjoyment, being able to spend time with him. I think what people don't realize and what I didn't realize is he graduated from high school and 2 weeks later he was at Miami of Ohio, where all his friends were finishing the summer with graduation parties and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm dropping my baby.
Yeah.
When they play football then for the next 6 years, the amount of time that they get to come home and be like my friends' kids who were home all summer, spring breaks and all that was very, very limited. So we made it a point to make sure that we were at almost every game. Now, I will tell you, I'm a little bit fair weathered. So some of those MAC conference games, it was freezing.
Yeah.
John may have gone. He will tell you, and I don't know the number, and if he was sitting here doing his buzzard, he would
Yes.
correct me, but I don't think he missed them.
Yeah.
But the biggest blessing to come out of it was that we met a core group of friends whose boys are friends with Andrew that had very similar values. We travel with them now. Andrew's made great friends. But I also think, Andrew went through high school. Every once in a while would have some struggles. And I think football really gave him a purpose when he got to college, and he liked the competition. But we also had a lot of moments of anxiety and stress. It's very, very, it's hard.
Yeah.
And
Do you have one or two or three injuries?
2 torn ACLs.
Yeah.
You know what? If I was sitting here with him, I'd be like, I now just can't even believe he got through it. The first time he was motivated to get back, right? But the problem was they give you this timeline that probably was too short.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, it's just really kind of crazy. The one time was the day before COVID, like practice shut down.
Right.
Think about that.
Yeah.
On a practice play.
Ugh.
Like it was like the last play, and he didn't even really know. He like ran back in, right? So then COVID hits. We're like, okay, well, no one's playing football. Rush back, and then he tore the same one again.
Right.
And as a mom, it was horrible because now he's not. He already knew what he was going to have to go through,
Right.
and we went through this time where I'm like, I don't think he might come back because with a torn ACL, you can get surgery or not. If you don't, you're just going to have this knee thing, right? When you're trying to play with your kids later in life. And then one day he called, he's like, all right, I'm going. And so then he played. And I remember sharing a video on LinkedIn of him walking out. They played UC his first game, coming off that second one. And the tears, and I don't even know how many views I got on that because, when you put it in perspective, and I think when I talk to him now, after 6 years, you're pretty tired.
Yeah.
And I think he probably would have tried out for a pro day, et cetera. He had another small injury. We lost my nephew that fall. So we just, emotionally for him, it just, the timing wasn't good. And I say to him, do you regret it? But now that he's a couple years out, he looks back on that as like a great time.
It's interesting how we all view ourselves so differently, and we're all in our own heads. I can't pretend to know Andrew or what he thought or what he went through, but if let's just use this as a really good example. Let's just say the way I looked at Andrew, not knowing him, only knowing him as your son, as a tight end on a Division I team, playing against great teams on TV, and thinking, man, like that kid has got everything going on for him, right? Like on the outside, he should have no problems, no issues. Big strapping guy, good looking kid, girls probably all over him. But yet as individuals, we all have our own insecurities and struggles and things like that.
It is, being a college athlete is the complete opposite of what an outside person sees in that, because even the best of the best are one injury away. I mean, you watch it on the NFL or in college football, you're watching, you're like, our little quarterback in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, done, right, for a year. So that fear, I would say that what they have to learn to do is overcome the fear. Because you're going to have it every day in every game. And so I'm really proud of him for doing that. And, I was kind of like, oh, what's he going to do after college? Because I really think, his initial intent was he would try to go pro, which, it's a small percentage, but that was what he was first going to do. And then that didn't work out. And, you talk about how like God works in just mysterious ways. We're sitting at the very last bowl game for breakfast. John and I are in Miami. If anyone watches, no one goes to the games. He did get to play in some really big stadiums, packed, right? Like just amazing places. And he's sitting there and he goes, hey, I love your son, Andrew. What's he going to do now? And I'm like, I don't know. He's been playing football. He hasn't really had a job. And he hands me a card and he goes, Stryker, which is a big medical device. The sales manager, Brian Canada, was a baseball player at Miami and loves athletes.
Oh, wow.
Have him get in touch with me. And that's how he landed at Stryker. And so, gosh, that was just a blessing, just landed, right in front of us that day.
And he's flying into Birmingham When,
Today? Yeah, I'm so excited.
All right, so let's go to Caroline.
Okay.
Your baby.
She is my baby.
So what was she like growing up? So
it's so funny. Andrew was like the rule follower kid, and she was the hellion.
Okay.
And the only way I can give one example is, those motorized vehicles the kids fly around on, like the cars. Well, we had the Harley Davidson one.
Yeah.
And Andrew was afraid of it. And Caroline at 1 year old is like whipping around our yard,
Is she going to get mad at you for saying, when she listened to this, that she was a hellion?
No.
Okay.
She'll totally admit it.
Okay.
In fact, she makes fun of Andrew. And then they flipped, right? So I always say she's kind of a mini me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really proud of her. Very tenacious. She has such a huge heart. And but she's doing medical device now. She loves relationship, her family, the whole 9 yards.
What was she in? Aside from being a hellion in high school, what was she into? What was she like
played. She actually played volleyball.
Okay.
And the reason I say she's so tough is she had a couple injuries that stopped her from playing volleyball in her back. And literally, I think now we're going on almost 2 years. She had spinal fusion surgery at 22.
Yikes.
And it still rears its ugly head on her, and I watch her and how much pain she can endure to go to work. I mean, I laugh because you see these kids now in their 20s. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, my finger hurts. I'm not coming to work, right? Or I need to work from home today. And a couple weeks ago, it went out and she has to stand all day in an OR. And I'm like, well, how did you do that? Drove to Montgomery, hour and a half, and did it. And she just didn't think any differently. So that's the only way I can describe her. But the biggest thing is she's just probably the biggest hearted human I know. She adopted a dog a year ago, and I'm like, oh, for God's sakes, what are you doing? But God, she loves that dog. And
where'd she go to school?
She went to Ursuline, where I went.
Okay.
She and then UK.
Oh, so she was a Wildcat.
Yeah, she was a Wildcat.
Now is she a big Wildcat basketball fan now?
Yes, but her boyfriend, who she's been dating for a long time, she met him there. Huge. In fact, the other night when they lost, he may or may not have been on suicide watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's this. You'll learn this when you move here and retire. There's a big correlation between Alabama football fans and Kentucky basketball fans.
Oh, I already know it. I can see it.
So there's this legacy of greatness, and also a spoiled, entitled fan base.
Right.
And ironically, there are these group of people who like Alabama football and Kentucky basketball.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to say they're the worst, but that is the ultimate bandwagon person if you like those two schools. But now Alabama made it to the Elite Eight. They won last night.
I know John said that this morning. He would agree with you on those fans, by the way.
Yeah.
Listen, one fun South fact, though, with her is her boss is Patrick Sullivan, whose dad won the Heisman at Auburn.
Pat Sullivan, quarterback, Heisman Trophy winner at Auburn.
Yeah, so that's Caroline's regional, I don't know the title, but
so
her
Pat
boss.
Sullivan Jr.
Yeah.
You know what? I just remembered this, is that I have a friend that worked there too that I text during this time.
We did talk about
Jason
it.
Sullivan. I wonder if she interacts with Jason at all.
I'll have to ask. She would know him probably now because Patrick Sullivan Jr.'s region's pretty big.
By the way, no relation between my friend Jason Sullivan and Pat Sullivan.
I remember
Jr.
you telling me that. Yeah. Now that you're saying it, senior moment.
What's she doing for them?
She's in what's called EP. So I thought it was like sales, like we think like device. You can go down that path. Electrophysiology. So you basically are in the OR mapping the heart for the heart surgeons.
Right.
You either have to go to a school she went to in Greenville. They have these medical device schools. She went 9 months after UK to learn it, or they hire like a lot of biomedical engineers. So when she calls us, we put her on speaker, and we're not really sure what she's talking about. It sounds really cool, and she sounds really smart, but I have no idea. So John and I just put her on speaker, and we listen to it. We go, okay, honey, that's great. And then, so.
Well, reason number 4,782 in the Matrix. You're my friend from Cincinnati. Yeah. Your daughter is now in Birmingham.
It's crazy.
Working with a company that my friends work with a long time. Yeah. And you say things like driving to Montgomery and things, which are my world, but not your world.
Right.
That's so funny the way life works out.
Well, the one thing I'll tell you is when it's very competitive. So she didn't have a lot of choice where she was going, right? Yeah. I mean, the jobs are few and far between. And, I remember her saying, I had to do a map. And I said, there's no way I'm moving to the South. I'm not a Southern girl. I'm not moving. She's in Birmingham now. But me as a mom, because my kids are, living pretty far away. I told you when we started this, my family all lives in Cincinnati. Right. So I wanted them to fly the nest. Mm-hmm. But some days I wish they didn't fly the nest, you
Yeah.
know, but I'm like, you need to do it now. So I'm happy that they're doing that and adulting that way. But when she said Birmingham, I had this just sense of relief knowing that I knew 4, 5, 6 people within an hour of her.
Right.
That if you really, really needed someone, I know CJ, her boyfriend, had coffee with Matt Stiles a couple
cool.
weeks ago on looking for some jobs, and Valerie's there. I remember she was helping Caroline. In fact, Caroline lives in Homewood where Valerie is. So,
By the way, Valerie
True
Turner,
Network.
True Network
Yeah.
Valerie.
Yep. So you're right. It's just, I feel like that's another blessing, right?
Yeah.
That she landed here. So
All right, so let me try to jump in here. So now,
yeah,
principal at employee benefit firm in Cincinnati. I almost don't want to ask any work questions. Sometimes I'm so anti-work.
Yeah.
I'm having such a good time just talking and
Yeah.
meeting people. I guess I'll ask a work question. So, how many employees right now at Strategic?
we have 22.
22 employees.
Yes.
That's when people ask me about True Network,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'll talk to prospective agencies
Right.
or strategic partners, and they'll say, what's the average size agency? And I should know these things off the top of my head, but it really is around 17 to 25
Yeah.
employees,
Right.
around 3 to 5 million in revenue it's like the best type of small business in America.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're a garage insurance broker.
Right.
You're not a big regional national player, but you've got this unique community and culture of 22 humans. What's the state of like leadership in Jen? Like, how are you feeling about just about running a business?
Yeah. You know, I will tell you, I'm having a lot of fun right now for the reason that, as you know, no one ever is in college. Most of them I'm going to insurance. And right now we have 4 recent college graduates working for us that I took a leap of faith on. And one of them, in fact, went to high school with Caroline and was valedictorian, went to South Carolina. She'll tell you she never thought she was going to be insurance. And they're all just flourishing. But I feel like I owe it to them to try and make them successful, because I would want someone to do the same for my kids.
Yeah.
I mean, they're my kids' age. And it's funny, one of our reps, Mutual of Omaha reps, who just moved back to Cincinnati, AJ, is friends with Andrew.
Yeah.
And he was at our team meeting a couple weeks ago. He's like, the hardest part of my job so far is calling her Jen and not Mrs. Homer, right? Because, I mean, I've known him since he was in first grade. But the energy in the office has been fun. I mean, it provides a lot of time and energy and a little bit of stress trying to get them trained up, because, as you know, when you are a business at 22, it's very hard to have a set training program. It's like you try and then it's just pretty much trial by fire.
Yeah.
And, our fourth quarter was really busy because Humana pulled out of the market, and I've got 2 benefit consultants running blocks, and probably had the hardest quarter we've ever had. And I'm like, you guys are doing this, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm telling them, it's even more fun now. I'm like, now I want you to get out and to see their faces in client meetings. And I said, the benefits are great. You don't want to be talking about deductibles and copays, but you're learning about businesses. To see them go out to a construction company, or I had one at a contractor, they're kind of getting it, and it's kind of fun to watch them. So.
That's so good. So I just several months ago spoke to the, I guess, under 18-month reps at Mutual of Omaha.
Okay.
They had a national sales meeting.
Okay.
And I went and spoke just to the young reps.
I think AJ was there.
Yep,
Yeah.
he was. And I was looking out. I probably even said this to them, where I was like, I feel like I'm talking to my son. Carson is 22 now.
Yeah.
No, 21. He'll be 22 in May. I feel like I'm talking to my son.
Right.
I was never more in my element to have talking about employee benefits, especially ancillary, and Mutual of Omaha, 2 kids who
Right.
I felt like were my kids. It was the most enjoyable moment.
Yeah.
So I can see how you would like that, because you see your kids.
Right.
in
And
them.
yeah. And you just, you want to make a difference, because I don't think every person in their 20s, you always hear, I don't know, some of the generations on, I need the ideal job, or I don't have the passion, or it's not in my soul, and they're 23. Right. And I'm like, yeah, you're not going to find that right now. I mean, if you do, that's great. But I hope that when they get out of bed in the morning, they're at least having some fun. And what's incredible is the ones that we have, we're remote on Fridays only. We never really went fully remote. Our city was different, and we served a lot of clients that weren't, so we just made the decision to not do that. They want to be in the office.
Yeah.
They love the collaboration. They love coming to work. None of them have come into me oh, can we have more? Because we're flexible.
Yeah.
But to just watch the energy and the buzz, and they go to more of the vendor happy hours than I do.
Yeah.
But I love that they are making friends. They all went and volunteered at an animal shelter on Wednesday. It's just cool. And whether or not they stay with us forever, I don't know. But I just hope it kind of goes back to what I said earlier: is I have to be making a difference when I get out of bed in the morning. It's just one small way that I can do it.
Mm-hmm. We've had a couple of interns now. Like my son and one of his best friends last summer. We have a intern right now, Savannah, who is the daughter of Ree, the coffee shop owner next door.
Oh, okay, fun. Yeah.
And just to see her face, now sometimes she has, I can see, she has no idea what we're talking
Right.
about. But it's so open and expressive, and she's learning so much. It really is something that can drive a leader,
Right.
especially in a small business.
Yeah.
So you're going to, from here,
Yes.
we're going to take a tour, but then you're going to drive to Birmingham to see both your kids.
Yes.
What are you guys doing this weekend?
So Caroline's got it all mapped out, but I think tonight we're going to one of her favorite spots. So in Homewood, literally you walk outside her apartment and there's just blocks and blocks.
So she lives in downtown.
She's right there.
Okay.
Yeah, she's right there. And then Saturday, she wants, Andrew's girlfriend Kayla's coming as well. So she wants the girls to shop, and she figures the guys will just watch basketball. And they'll probably be very happy. And then we're going to some fantastic Italian place for dinner. And then Andrew and Kayla fly out. So
you're going to two different restaurants.
Yeah.
Do you know, is one of them, is it Gianmarco's or Bottega?
It's not Bottega. We've been there. So it might be Gianmarco's. It's right a mile from Homewood.
Yep, Gianmarco's.
Okay.
They
have good wine prices and stuff, maybe.
I'm guessing. If it's not
Okay.
Gianmarco's, then you'll go there at some point.
It sounds familiar, so that might be where we're going.
It probably
Yeah,
is.
that's
It's
probably
so
it.
good.
Yeah.
So actually, Val and I go whenever we're in Birmingham
Okay.
usually.
Okay.
And pretty much everybody in your world loves it. So Matt Stiles, Valerie down there. Where are you going tonight?
Tonight's more of a sports bar, literally right there.
Okay.
I have my phone off. I could look because she's told me, but I'm just so excited to have them captive, because when your kids are in their 20s and have jobs, you
Right.
quickly realize they have vacation time too,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, what do you mean you can't come home? So, when I started the year thinking about travel, John and I are going to make some sacrifices to what our agenda is on other type of travel, because first and foremost, I need to see my kids.
Yeah.
And so I kind of mapped out the year of when I'm going to see them and not see them, and do those things first, and then, kind of fill in the gaps, because it's so hard to get them together.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about your nephew.
Yes.
You mentioned when we were talking about Andrew in
Yes.
2020, about him getting injured, COVID, and then you lost Jack.
Yeah.
Can you just tell the story?
Sure.
Around.
Yeah.
Well, let's just tell Jack's
Okay.
story and we'll get into it.
Yeah. I kind of want to start with my sister Stephanie and Tom. My brother-in-law lived 10 houses from us up until I think my kids were in 7th grade. So her kids, Jack and then Andrew, were literally like siblings. I mean, we vacationed together and the whole thing. And Jack passed away from a fentanyl poisoning. And wow, like
And he was how old?
he was 23. I hope I'm right on that number. But the overall gist of Jack's story is just unbelievable. So Jack was highly intelligent, all-American high school kid, right? So brilliant. Like, I used to be like, Andrew, why can't you read more books like Jack? Why can't you get grades like Jack? He did one of the graduation speeches at Moeller High School, and then he went to South Carolina's International Business School, traveled to I don't know how many countries. It was unbelievable. Just the most well-rounded kid. So smart that after Jack died and Steph and Tom had to go pick up their stuff, Jack's entire television was in Portuguese.
Oh, wow.
And then later they found a journal of his written in full Portuguese. So had just fully learned it. So
Right.
just, if you were going to put the picture perfect kid on here. So he got his first job right when COVID hit. He was in this venture capital program at South Carolina. So he worked at home that summer, and Steph and Tom do a lot of speaking engagements to raise awareness. And we were actually at GE, which was pretty incredible last week. And they said it was such a blessing that Jack was home with them. Like, they look back on that time And then in August, the company was in Baltimore, said, hey, it's time to come. So I laugh. I'm like, I can't believe you just put him in a U-Haul. But they just packed him up and drove him. I probably coddled my kids too much. But Labor Day weekend, they went. And then she has Adam, who's a sophomore in high school, who normally she'd find a babysitter for him because he didn't want to go. But he went. And then my nephew, Tyler, who's only 18 months younger than Jack, did all the same things, the same program. And he was working for a firm within this program in Philly. So he came in, and so they'll tell you their last time with Jack was that weekend, also with 2 South Carolina graduates, and that becomes important in a minute. And they went home, and I remember the day because we were down at UK's Parents Weekend, and we were living on a farm temporarily because we were redoing a house. And I remember John picking up the phone, and I just hear hysterics. But I didn't think it was my brother-in-law. I didn't know who it was. And he said, you got to get over here, get Adam. Something's happened to Jack. They didn't know.
Right.
And so we're like, oh my gosh, okay. So we go get Adam. Who would have thought fentanyl, right? And I'm getting Adam dinner. And he said, and I'm getting bits and pieces of this. And he goes, yeah, my dad was frustrated. He was talking to the cop, and Jack's still alive, but the other kid's not. So Jack and Chris, both South Carolina graduates, went out that night with another one. And one thing we've learned with Verizon, you will never get in your phone of your loved one. I mean, so I think it really bothers my sister Steph that she doesn't know exactly that. Did cocaine, and it was laced with fentanyl. So everyone says overdose. It's really not an overdose. It's a poisoning, because none of these kids set out right to overdose and die. I mean, they thought they did coke. And Chris was already dead, and they found Jack. Steph and Tom say when they called, they said it's bad. But Steph says she just had hope. And when they got there, the doctor's like, he's a 1% chance of living. And she's like, well, if Jack can do it, he can do it. So he passed away. And for all of us parents and anyone listening to this, we warn our kids about don't drink too much. The problem with fentanyl right now, it's the number one killer. 18 to 45 in the country, not cancer, not like the statistics as we've delved in. But what's so incredible about my sister and brother-in-law is we started a family foundation. And I mean, we got the domain and the tax ID number right after Jack died. Like I'm like, somehow we're going to make Jack's memory live on, because Steph's biggest thing and Tom's is they don't want his memory to die. And if any of you if you check out the website, it's doitforjack.org, she's all about the spiritware. And so our Do It for Jack spiritware has been in like 38 countries, I think. So we started a family foundation immediately, and it gets her out of bed. Both of them, because they didn't want to get out of bed. You can't describe it. And we're raising awareness in schools, starting in grade school, because the problem is the fentanyl is being put in Adderall, Xanax, any of these pills these kids are taking, where you used to borrow your friends, and now you can dial it up on like Snapchat, DoorDash. So it was a very sad journey, but I think that I kind of flipped my belief, because growing up Catholic was always like, you would say, why did God take so-and-so? They were so young. Or why did God take that baby? And I heard a pastor talk at our church who lost his nephew, like suddenly. And here's a pastor, right? He's like, my faith is shaken, but I don't think God takes people. I think the world has evil in it. But he helps you find a way to get your way through it and find it. And I think, my sister is on our church prayer app and goes to church. And if still has that. So I think God's purpose now is we've got to not only keep Jack's memory alive, but if one kid makes a decision, and the Do It for Jack came from, and it gives me chills to talk about it, at the funeral, and Steph and Tom are still in complete shock, but before church started, Catholic service, there was probably 1,000 people there. My sister taught at the grade school. Tom stood up and he goes, before we start, we need to get the elephant out of the room. And he told a story, and he said, when you're faced with something difficult, say no, do it for Jack. Or, I don't got the exact words, but that's where the Do It for Jack tagline came.
So Britt knows this. A lot of times, with the opioid epidemic. It started kind of like in Appalachia, and then it was this highway, and it made its way through kind of Sand Mountain, which is where we are. And then it sort of spread across the country. And then there have been numerous, Britt, I don't know how many kids young adults we've seen in this community that have died from fentanyl poisoning.
That's interesting because we haven't even talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a fair number, a couple of kids that are my daughter's age. Yeah. One was actually in high school. I never had, for whatever reason, my personality, I never wanted to try drugs. Right. I just didn't. Not because I was good or better, or I don't know. Maybe I was scared, or maybe I'm too much of a control person. But I look at, Val and I both have 2 kids at the University of Alabama. Crazy party culture, the amount of drugs that are in these, big schools, and how frivolous they take their decision making. Yeah. It's super scary. Yeah. To get any one single human being to make a better decision. Right. Just to say no. Right. Like I don't want my kids to really drink too much either. Yeah. And I don't want, do you remember how there were parents like in high school? They're like, well, I'm just going to have all the kids in the basement and have a cake party. I'd rather them drink here than drive. I'm like, I don't think that's the purpose. Yeah. Like, I don't want to encourage my kids to drink at all. Right. But, geez, it is so scary.
It's so scary. And, what Steph always says, because, it's amazing. She'll talk in these high schools and then they do surveys. Now we've done 2 corporate events, is the kids are like, I don't know what to say. And she's like, just say you know someone. Yeah. Hey, thank you. I'm going to pass because my friend Jack died. She's like, use Jack's name. Your friend Jack died. And it's unbelievable. Mark is on our board now, and he lost his daughter, the most gorgeous person you've ever seen, Xanax. Yeah. It's 7 out of 10 pills. I knew you were going to ask me about this, so I had to write down. So a year ago, it was 6 out of 10 pills are laced, and now it's 7 out of 10 in a 12-month window.
I don't even know. How did that happen?
And we went from 73,000 deaths in 2022 to 83,000 in 2023. It's all over the news right now. Like I'm on this foundation committee, and every time I hear these statistics, I'm like blown away. And I think I shared with you and Val last night, they were asked to speak at a national sales meeting, be like our true meeting. Right. And so they spoke in Cincinnati, and at the end they said, hey, will you stand up if you've been impacted by fentanyl? And I'm going to say, John thought, I wasn't there, but he thought maybe 100 people in the room. 30 people stood up. Yeah. 30. And then I was at a networking event the other night talking to a prospective client I know, and she's like, oh yeah, my daughter's boyfriend died at OU. They weren't dating at the time. And I'm like, this is crazy to me that you just told me about Guntersville. Like these one-off conversations that that's a conversation now. Yeah. Right? Like it's crazy.
We'll look back and so I'm ignorant in the fact of how it gets into so many drugs. Like I don't know how it happens.
Right. Well, why it happens. What's happening is my husband actually went to the border with my brother-in-law and a couple other people a couple weeks ago. It's from what I understand, flows mostly out of China into Mexico and come over. And you got to understand that the cartels and the drug their goal is to get you addicted, but it's 2 grains of salt of fentanyl to kill you. So if you're like, you got coke, they're not measuring, they're not, they're not paying attention. And people say, well, fentanyl, they give that to you in the hospital if you have cancer or something. I've got I wish I had it, but the dosing difference, say it's milligrams and micrograms, right. What you're getting in the hospital is so far less strong than what you're getting on the street. So they're not trying to kill people. But we really correct people on fentanyl poisoning because I think you think overdose like, oh, you did too many drugs that night and you OD'd. None of these kids or even young adults are setting out to die. The scary thing is there's a huge article in the Wall Street Journal, and these were big, successful executives, low 30s, Wall Street, any high-pressure jobs, attorneys, Wall Street, it's so prevalent. Yeah. The coke. I had no idea. I was like you. I'm like, what? Yeah, happy hours, and they had the same dealer delivering through Uber, and all 3 of these people died that same night. Yeah. So
That's great. It's interesting. I am sheltered, although I have,
I know.
in the past, say, 10 years, been in multiple situations within our industry,
Yeah.
at industry events, where I will overhear people talking about Coke.
isn't that crazy?
And I'm
I think
like-
I just go to bed too early, Adam.
Well, listen, I'm going to say I'm not going to judge
Right.
people because I make bad decisions in other parts of
Same.
my life.
I totally agree.
So I'm not going to judge that, but I don't understand the what drives you
Right.
to want to chase that.
Yeah.
To me, I talk to my kids. I was just talking to Chris Hamilton. He
Yeah.
called me right just right before I walked in.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And we were talking about decision making, and we had a kind of a wide ranging conversation. And the risk reward. We're actually talking about how my kids will call me Tony Robbins sometimes.
Yeah.
They're like, Dad, sometimes we just want to talk about music,
Yeah.
like nothing serious. But when you don't have them a lot,
Right.
you're like, oh, I want to suck all I can out of
I
this
know.
20-minute interaction.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, Dad, come on. But
Exactly.
anyway, to me, it's always kind of been like a risk reward.
Yeah.
Like the risk of me doing Coke
Right.
is, number one, so people die from the first time they just do regular Coke sometimes.
Right.
They just have a heart attack or thing like that. And then you got the fentanyl thing. It's just, there's no reward that's worth dying.
No, and now maybe in the 60s and 70s when this was going, I don't know. Now you just can't. Like, you have to be afraid when you see the percentages of lace. Like, and now they have those test strips. Like, I was blown away. Our little cute brewery in Cincinnati, one of our clients, actually a big brewery. Mostly, I think of them like 40-year-olds, like going with their kids, dogs, the whole thing. The Hamilton County, our county started these test strips, and I was talking to them like they were gone in 48 hours.
Where you can test to see if something had fentanyl in it.
But I'm like, who's taking them? But the problem is, if it's 2 grains of salt, you're gonna trust a test strip. I mean, I'm glad there's foundations passing them out. It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be abstinence now that it's just.
And you're going to speak at the, you're going to do a True Talk on this at the next True Learning Academy.
I know. I'm excited.
Well, it'll be impactful too.
Yeah.
All right.
So, thank you for asking.
By the
Yeah.
way, we're overtime. I told
Wow.
you. We're like 15, 20 minutes overtime.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
How about that?
Sorry, everyone that's going to listen. No.
No, that's perfect. Now we're going to go take a tour of Gunnersville.
Okay.
We're going to get John,
Great.
Miss Hot Dog.
Yes.
And we're going to do it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
So we have to cheers and say true love.
Cheers. True love.
Cheers, Jennifer Homer. True love.
Hands up, heads down.